Hello, dear friends. We're here today to talk to you a bit about the kind of practice you may be doing at home. As lay people, we don't always have the benefit of being in a monastery where people know us well and there's wise guidance. And so we wanted to let you know some maybe tips and ways to make your practice enjoyable and avoid certain pitfalls that can happen when we walk on this path. I spent about 10 years trying to figure out how to carefully manage my monkey mind and follow my breath. I thought I had to only follow my breath, and then I found out that there might be other ways to ground myself and focus so that I could get more out of my sitting meditation and my practice in general. And when I found out that there were other options, I quickly discovered that they led me right into following my breath. So rather than you groping around for things that help you feel stable and enjoy your practice, we thought we'd have a conversation and introduce you to some of those ideas. So Jonathan, did you have trouble following your breath? That's the kind of the basic practice.
Sure. I don't know if it was more trouble than most people have, especially at the beginning, since it's a new practice and certainly goes against our conditioning and habit energy. But I know for a long time, spent a long time trying to connect with the breath and develop it as a means of calm and mindfulness and concentration, and wish I had known some of the things that I know now earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What I noticed was when I tried to follow my breath, I couldn't get a full breath, and it reminded me of being a tween and laying in bed at night and trying to go to sleep and not being able to get a full breath and getting tense as the night went on. And so that reminder just kind of nixed it for me. And when I learned to pay attention more to how my body was moving up and down from the breath and noticing different parts of my body, eventually I noticed, I'm just following my breath. And that was a delightful surprise, but it came about 10 or 11 years into practice.
Yeah. I think maybe my experience might be pretty common in just that trying to follow the breath would usually just kind of wander into drowsiness and low energy, and then pretty soon my mind would just be off in a daydream or ruminating about something, and I had forgotten about the breath entirely, and would come back for a little while, and then all that would just happen again and again for a whole meditation period. And what I learned from me is that sometimes being aware of the feeling of my body is more accessible, more interesting to me anyways. And the feeling of my body can just be maybe the weight on whatever I'm sitting on, or just the feeling of the body itself, the kind of energy throughout, or the feeling throughout. And I've thought a little bit about why this is the case for me, and it's a bit more of a subtle sensation than the breath is, so I kind of have to use a little more effort to notice it and stay with it
in a
way that keeps me there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you're the kind of person who tends to be lower energy in habit, and I'm more jacked up. And so what I noticed when I tried to follow the breath was I was getting more and more and more tense until I couldn't sit in. I just couldn't sit anymore. So, then I learned just a few years ago that there's this thing called the window of tolerance, where something takes over at some point. You get hijacked by your nervous system, and you can be checking in with your body to know what are the signs of being regulated and being able to focus to some degree so that your practice is beneficial. And when you kind of jump out of that zone of being able to be mindful, and that when I know I'm getting up towards the edge, I have little tricks to bring me back down. And I'm guessing you're more familiar with the bottom edge to bring you back up.
Yeah. My tendency, habit, energy is definitely more to sink than to rise. And
what do you notice?
Well, I'll notice like my limbs feeling heavy, the breath is heavy, mind is foggy. It's like feels like fatigue. A lot of physical and mental inertia.
What's it like when you drop below that line?
It's just it's a kind of frozenness. It's really hard to get myself to do anything, and I just want to get absorbed in some sort of distraction, usually media or food.
So that's when you're not sitting.
Yeah.
Does it happen when you're sitting?
Well, certainly not for a while. I hadn't thought about that, and yeah, sure. When I'm sitting, it's getting carried away into fantasy, mental constructions, and the way that I can notice it happening in my body is I'm not mindful of my posture anymore. So I'll start slumping and getting crooked and ignoring pain. Yeah.
So I've heard, because I don't have that tendency, that when sometimes people can mistake this kind of dissociated state with being really concentrated. And so they're not feeling their breath, they're not feeling their body, they're not feeling anything, and their mind is vacant.
Yeah.
And then they get up from the bell and they're a little stuck there.
Yeah.
So that's something to be watchful for. And then what do you do to energize yourself more?
So in sitting, when I am able to recognize that going on, I'll shift my attention to I'll fix my posture, and then I'll shift my attention to some pleasant sensation in the body and concentrate there. I'll smile. So I will bring a smile to my face and focus on whatever pleasant sensation I find in the body. And I've done this a few times now. I usually know where to go looking first.
That's incredible, because the smile works from both directions.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've heard Ty say forever, and I never really got how clever it is to even begin with a smile on your face. Of course, it can't be a fake smile.
Right.
But.
Yeah, when it's especially combined with feeling something pleasant, I don't know if I'm smiling on purpose or not. Yeah. So it that will usually brighten the mind and make me feel more alert and able to direct my attention as I want to.
I think the important thing to know is that we're getting to know ourselves, especially the subtle messages from our bodies, and that we need to know when we've had enough. And a lot of people err on the side of, oh, it's uncomfortable, I shouldn't be focusing on it, and quit too soon. And other people go, kind of white knuckling it, and then can get really stuck there in a state of anxiety or dissociation. And that doesn't happen to that many people,
Mm-hmm.
but I think especially given the time we're in now where there's constant stressors, our bodies are not made for constant stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're very likely to get stuck if we're exacerbating that constant stress with our practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So there are times when I'm sitting and I just can't lift myself out of that sluggish state, and then I'll do walking meditation
Mm-hmm.
or exercise or something instead
Mm-hmm.
of sitting.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's important for people to recognize this is kind of like an experiment where we're the living laboratory, and we have to know the signs, how to read our inner experience,
Mm-hmm.
and how to adapt the practice so it really works for us. Because, a guided meditation might say, oh, smile, now you feel happy.
Yeah.
Well, I don't feel happy. I'm doing it wrong. Or then you get disgruntled or whatever. To know that the words are there as a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are other words that feel more stabilizing or more relatable, to experiment and see what happens when you just think those.
Yeah, I think it's definitely best when facilitators can use more of an invitational style of language.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're not, then sometimes I will insert the invitational language myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that way I am more just aware and accepting of, oh, my experience might not be exactly what the facilitator is describing or trying to guide us towards.
Right.
Yeah, actually, this is from a friend who shared earlier that I just keep coming back to. She said something about how when she's practicing breathing in, I feel happy, breathing out, I feel joyful, or whatever, those standard gathas that we get.
Yeah.
She's changed it to breathing in, I'm willing.
Yes, yeah. I heard that.
Yeah, I like
that
that so
was
much.
Really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives more spaciousness. Also, I think it's important to recognize some of us have had some really big things happen, and those sit in our bodies in ways that could surprise us, that we may begin to feel uncomfortable, not know why,
Mm-hmm.
and to be so uncomfortable as to want to run away from it, and that there are ways to gently acknowledge, okay, I need a break. I need a break for 5 minutes. I need a break just to focus on something pleasant. I need a break to get physical. I need a break to start sleeping better before I'm sitting.
Mm-hmm.
To know what one's capacity is when difficulties arise, whether we have the capacity to hold it in mindfulness or we're going to freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And to not let ourselves do that, to give
Mm-hmm.
ourselves a lot of compassion and space to develop our own inner wisdom. And of course, it's important to know when you kind of exceeded what you can do, and that maybe you need to talk to somebody in a sangha
Mm-hmm.
or a dharma teacher,
Mm-hmm.
a monastic.
Yeah, and for me, it's helpful to know that there are a lot of teachings that encourage that kind of approach, because it is easy to get the idea that this practice is just sitting with whatever comes up and not doing anything to change your experience, and to leave whatever is arising kind of untouched. And but there are lots of teachings that suggest that we are active in the process of bringing about wholesome states and diminishing unwholesome states. And that, like you said, we have various capacities depending on how resourced we are in that moment. So the practice is resourcing ourselves as much as we need before going directly into whatever difficulties are presenting themselves. Yeah.
You know, Thai talks about situations where 1,000 boat people's lives were eminently doomed, and walking together with others all night long, doing walking meditation until they were calm enough to create an effective plan. And wow, that's a long time to be walking. But of course, Thai was very resourced as well. And I also read Thai, even in the midst of the worst parts of the war, Thai insisted on taking down days.
Yeah.
In between everything, no matter what, that was his lifeline. And so we need to take a lot of permission for that.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with us for doing that.
That's right. On the other hand, if you never tax yourself, your ability to deal with difficult feelings just shrinks. So we need enough challenge to become resilient.
Yeah.
And not so much that we become dysregulated.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a good stretch.
Yeah.
If you stretch too far, then you injure yourself. If you don't stretch enough, you're not doing anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So knowing that everything is by invitation, knowing that window of where you're stable and where you're not, having some grounding ways when you're creeping up to the edges of that limit that you can handle, and concentrating on what brings you solidity, well-being at that point. And then being diligent, not giving up.
Yeah.
Because, wow, even in the 10 years that I couldn't follow my breath, I got an immense amount out of the practice. And understanding myself and being able to be more effective and kind and gentle with the people around me.
Yeah, I really think those are all skillful means, and the more tools and strategies that we have and the more we try, we gain the experience that we need for knowing when is the right time for which practice.
And practicing with other people. And this practice is grounded in making sure you have a sangha. And, you know, times are challenging, but that doesn't mean that you can't go on Zoom or you can't have a telephone conversation with one other practitioner. There are many ways to connect, and I think that's vital. It's been vital for me.
Yeah.
So what have the fruits of the practice been for you, Jonathan?
So, the practice, or what we've been talking about? Or?
No, the practice. Like, why bother with all that difficulty?
Oh, man.
Yeah, you want to spend the next 5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I could. Right now, the tastiest fruit is that I know how to generate joy inside of myself, and I'm getting better at I just sitting here and doing it now. That's coming more and more, but if I sit for 5 minutes, I can bring myself and generate joy in my body and totally change my mood and feel good about life, which is not where I was 15 years ago. It also in practicing concentration, I become more discerning in what constitutes a good life for me, in that I'm able more and more to detect stress and where it comes from and not pursue it. Stress, suffering, different kinds of words, but I'm really able to kind of see what is going on in my mind and know when it's not going in the direction that I want it to. And then I have many different kinds of practices and tools for helping to nudge it back in towards peace and more freedom. So yeah, like concretely, tangibly, I have less fear, less anxiety, more happiness and confidence in myself, and it's offered me also a place where I can serve, and that has meant a lot to me too. So giving back to a community has been really wonderful for me developing as an adult. I'm lucky that I found this practice just as I became an adult, and without somewhere to be in that way, I could have very easily gotten lost.
It's funny. I credit the practice with making me an adult. I think that it really connected me up to my history, to my ancestors, in a way that created a lot more space for me to feel compassion for myself, even if I didn't like some of the ways in which I was expressing myself. At least I understood where that was coming from. And then it made me more able to look at some of my own shortcomings and chip away at them in a way that gave me a lot more confidence in the practice. So it kind of snowballed good energy. It's also made me appreciate the miracle that we're just here, period, and how intricate we are, and also that kind of giving back, that because I don't feel as hesitant about myself, I feel much more fearless, and I can take on things with groups of people that I never thought I could do before. And so my ability to give back has really mushroomed. And it's made my life really happy. Not only happy on an individual level, but I love being part of a group that accepts each other's shortcomings, that sees them, and that's learning to work harmoniously even though those things are there. You know, just the amount of acceptance there can be. Yeah, pretty exhilarating.
Yeah. I think that had a big effect on me also. Like, I remember going in the first few years to my sangha at home and realizing these people actually love me, and how that was difficult for me to accept and let in at first, but that they were willing to give me a chance to practice and develop skills like speaking, facilitating, sitting with somebody and listening. With that understanding that, we all come with a history of suffering. I got it, you got it, and so we're here for each other to hold it tenderly as we support each other in transforming it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You probably have no idea, at least for me, how happy I am to have Jonathan as my friend. Yeah.
Thank you. I've benefited a lot too from having you as a friend.
Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. I am blooming as a flower.